Welcome everyone. My name is Dominic Ramos, and I am part of the Baylor University Department of Education, Learning and Organizational Change program. My mentor is Dr. Karina Call, and the title of my defense is a quantitative correlational investigation examining the Nexus. West Texas Secondary Teachers' Perspectives on Administrator Emotional Intelligence and its Influence on Job Stress, Job Satisfaction, and Turnover Intentions. The overview for my study will follow a problem statement, followed by the purpose of this particular dissertation, then the conceptual framework that I used to navigate my study, followed by the methodology, which will comprise of four components: design, the site, the participants, and the data collection, followed by a brief overview of the significant results that I acquired from my study, then the integration of the results with the literature, the implications and recommendations for a set of three stakeholders, and the limitations, followed by the distribution plan that I plan to follow for disseminating all of my results. Now, the problem statement starts with attrition levels for teachers are at all-time high. The insufficient teachers are available to fill open positions. With that, 50% of new teachers are leaving the profession within their first 5 years, from DeAngelis and Presley et al. 2022. Now, replacing a teacher who leaves in an urban school district can cost upwards of $20,000. The national cost of public school teacher attrition could potentially be a staggering $7.3 billion per year. Now, when you account for inflation, that number could be much closer to $8 billion per year. Now, one of those components that leads to attrition is burnout. It is a predictive of lower job satisfaction, higher levels of depression, and most importantly, teacher attrition. Now, one factor that educators report as being a potential reason for leaving the profession is a lack of support from their administrative teams. Thus, my purpose statement is to examine if secondary school teachers' perceptions of administrators' emotional intelligence predict teachers' job stress, turnover intention, or job satisfaction as mediated by their administrators' transformational leadership style. My conceptual framework that I use to guide my study comes from Sandlam and O'Higgins 2012, and they looked at the manager's emotional intelligence and how that was related to a mediator variable of manager's transformational leadership style, and then followed by how that correlated with the dependent variable of employee outcomes. Now, they had four employee outcomes, which were employee performance, job satisfaction, organizational commitment, and job stress. I did not look at employee performance for this particular study. And for organizational commitment, I looked at teachers' turnover intention rather than direct attrition. Thus, my research questions are: first, what is the relationship among teachers' job satisfaction, job stress, turnover intention, and teachers' perception of their assistant principal's emotional intelligence? For question 2, do researchers' perceptions of their assistant principal's emotional intelligence significantly predict teachers' job stress? And for question 3, does it predict teachers' turnover intention? So same question, but I am looking at job stress for 2 and turnover intention for question 3. For question 4, I was looking at, is the relationship between teachers' perceptions of their assistant principal's emotional intelligence and job satisfaction mediated by teachers' perception of their assistant principal's transformational leadership style? Thus, my methodology followed a quantitative correlational design using cross-sectional survey data. My research site was West Texas Independent School District. That is a pseudonym. It looked at a total of 18 total secondary campuses. Of those 18, 8 were secondary high schools, and the remaining 10 were secondary middle schools. The participants were employed and certified educators within the West Texas Independent School District, and I used convenience sampling to acquire my participants. The data collection was comprised of a 41 question survey, which consisted of 4 different subscales, the first of which was a global transformational leadership scale. Then I used a Wong and Law emotional intelligence scale. There was 4 models or subscales within the Wong and Law EI scale. I only used 2. Those 2 components were OEA and ROE. OEA is others emotional appraisal, and ROE is the regulation of emotion. And then finally, the next one was teacher burnout scale, which I used to assess teachers' job satisfaction and teacher job stress. So those were 2 components within the teacher burnout scale that I kind of teased out and I applied in my study. And finally, I used the turnover intention scale by Root 2004. Now, an overview of my results. The first research question was a Pearson's R correlation design or study, and what I found was a strong negative linear relationship between turnover intention and job satisfaction, with an R value of negative 0.79 and a P value less than 0.01. What that tells me is that as turnover intention increases, job satisfaction decreases, which intuitively makes sense. And the inverse is also true. As turnover intention decreases, job satisfaction goes up. There is no causal relationship for a Pearson's R correlation. The next was a strong positive linear relationship between job stress and turnover intention. So as job stress goes up, so does turnover intention, with an R value of 0.71 and a P value less than 0.01. For research questions 2 and 3, I used a simple linear regression. Now, I did find that assistant principals' emotional intelligence significantly predicted teachers' job stress. With an R squared value of 0.105, that did tell me that 10.5% of the variance between teachers' job stress could be attributed to assistant principals' EI. For the next research question, I did find an assistant principal's emotional intelligence significantly predicted teacher turnover intention. Now, both of those were a p-value of 0.001. The R squared value tells us that 12.1% of the variance can be attributed, 12%, 12.1% of the variance between teacher turnover intention can be explained by assistant principals' emotional intelligence. Now, for both of those, as emotional intelligence increases, for research question 1, teacher job stress decreases by 0.187, and for research question 2, as it increases by 1 unit for EI, teachers turnover intention decreases by 0.154. So as EI goes up, both job stress and teacher turnover intention go down. Now, for research question 4, my mediation model, as I wanted to model this after my my study from, or my framework from Sandlam and O'Higgins, and that was that AP emotional intelligence is is statistically significant relationship with AP transformational leadership. That is model A. Then from AP transformational leadership to teacher job satisfaction, model B, there was a non-statistically significant relationship. Now, from AP emotional intelligence and teacher job satisfaction, there was no statistically significant relationship. This one had a p-value of 0.115. And between those two, most likely the reason for that was because of the model for B. If there was no statistically significant relationship there, most likely there was not going to be the overall relationship between AP emotional intelligence and teacher job satisfaction. However, the indirect relationship still showed that it was statistically significant with a p-value of less than 0.001 and an index mediation value of 0.07, the p-value of less than 0.001, 95% confidence interval of 0.08 and 0.45. Now, integration of my results with the literature. My current study supports the inverse relationship between administrator emotional intelligence and teacher job stress. It supports the negative relationship between teachers' perception of assistant principal emotional intelligence and teacher job stress, found in Sandlam and O'Higgins. Supports Salim et al. 2017, suggesting that emotional intelligence among leadership can impact turnover and tension, also known as organizational commitment. However, it does not support the findings of Sandlam and O'Higgins, as I found no mediation relationship between assistant principal emotional intelligence and teacher job satisfaction. The current study and Sandlam and O'Higgins both revealed that emotional intelligence could potentially be a characteristic that influences the development of administrator transformational leadership. And finally, Kim 2017 suggests that the leaders with high emotional intelligence are more likely to influence employee visions, inspiration, and attending to their specific needs. Then the implications and recommendations for my current study. For assistant principals, it is to be actively engaged in emotional intelligence programs when possible. Use EI self-assessments to see where you are at. And because it is a plastic form of intelligence, it can be developed over time. So you are not relegated to staying at one level of emotional intelligence your whole life. It can be improved. And it is also to foster open communications with your teachers. Then for district leadership, to recognize the influence of assistant principals EI on teacher attrition and teacher burnout, and develop strategies to enhance emotional intelligence. And hopefully integrate emotional intelligence as an evaluation component. Then, for future research, I encourage other researchers to continue studying the impact of assistant principal emotional intelligence on teacher well-being, conduct confirmatory studies, and provide insights into the nature of these connections. Now, my limitations for my current study are: one, the influence of the school year itself. Because this was performed at the end of the school year, teachers tend to get tired. They're a little bit more burnt out. They might have students that are a little bit more rambunctious. This could have potentially had an impact on my study. In addition to that, there was a low response rate. 3.5% of the district population that actually responded to my survey, which could have had an impact on power and not allowed me to see an effect if an effect was indeed present. Then limiting access to administrators. Not enough teachers responded to the survey, thus they did not give me the perceptions of their administrators that I could then use to see if there was a statistically significant relationship between each of my variables, or it could have impacted to what degree that relationship occurs. Then this was a single school district study, thus it is not largely generalizable. It is going to be West Texas teachers on a border town that this study directly influences. If you can replicate this study in other areas, then we can get a larger picture of what's really happening between the emotional intelligence of administrators and its impact or influence on teachers. Thus, my distribution plan is with assistant principals to attend educational leadership conferences, workshops, and professional development sessions, but ultimately having those one-on-one conversations with them and telling them how EI can potentially influence the well-being of their teachers. For district leadership, it is to provide posters for workshops that they can pass out, presentation slides that can be used within trainings, manuscripts from those presentations, and speaking engagements should I be invited. And finally, for future researchers, I would love the opportunity to present my research at American Educational Research Association ERA, or host workshops at universities for leadership preparatory programs and give a talk to those students. And finally, publish my research in a peer-reviewed publication. I want to finish off by thanking my dissertation committee, Dr. Karina Call, Dr. Shelby Vaughn, and Dr. Nadine Franz. I appreciate everything you've done to get me to this point. Thank you so much. And for everybody else that is watching, have a wonderful evening. Take care.